Live from New Delhi, you're watching DD India, DD India's voice to the world. This is the News Hour. I'm Amritpal Singh. Coming up in the next 1 hour, let's first tell you the biggest development in a latest development from Bangladesh. Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina has resigned and has left her residence in Dhaka. This is the biggest news breaking right now. Protesting students have occupied the streets of capital Dhaka in the long march to the Dhaka program. The protesters are giving flowers to the army personnel. In a short while from now, the army chief is expected to address a press conference. But the big news coming in, Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina resigns as the Prime Minister of Bangladesh, with around 90 killed in fresh clashes in protests across Bangladesh and a curfew imposed for indefinite time. The anti-discrimination student movement announced that it will hold a march to Dhaka, which they are, and the army is out on the streets. These visuals that we are beaming to you on your screens, the army out on the streets, curfew imposed. It is an emergency-like situation. You can see students or people from the protesters, from the resistance movement atop buildings and waving flags of victory. So clearly it is a victory of sorts for them, because they were calling in for Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina's resignation. She had offered to hold talks with the protesters, but clearly the protesters were in no mood to rein in. We'll have to see what it means, what it could mean for the political stability of Bangladesh in the short term. But it clearly looks like the only information that we have right now is that Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina has resigned. We'll have to see whether the military will take over or they will appoint an interim administration, interim political administration, or would it be directly ruled by the military for the moment. But clearly, things have gone into a spin with Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina throwing in the towel. She resigned a little while back and left her official residence in Dhaka. She would have she would have been taken to a safe location because there is visible anger against her on the streets of Dhaka and all around Bangladesh. She had been battling protests for about 20 odd days now. So with this development, Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina resigning. And let's now go over to Dhaka, from where my colleague Naval Singh Parmar joins us from Dhaka. First of all, Naval Singh, can you confirm this, that Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina has resigned?
Yes, it is difficult to confirm right now that whether she resigned and she has left out of Dhaka or not. But there are multiple sources in news media platform, and some TV channels are also showing some visuals about the occupation of Gana Bhavan, the official residence of Bangladesh Prime Minister, by the common people. So there are updates and multiple sources who are claiming about the resignation of Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina, but there is no official announcement from any quarters here in Bangladesh or Dhaka. But one thing I would like to make clear here that today afternoon, during the long march to Dhaka, many people from North Bengal, from Memon Singh side, around lakhs of people traveled to Dhaka, and there were already a huge crowd on streets and roads of Dhaka. I saw visuals on the TV channels that they were offering flowers and offering hug to the army personnel. So at certain moment of after certain point of time, army people left resisting to the entering protester in Dhaka. So they allowed them to enter in Dhaka, and now the roads and streets of Dhaka are full with the protester from all walk of life, common people like celebrities and the
Naval Singh, give us a sense.
Everyone is there.
Naval Singh, can you hear me? All right. Is curfew imposed in Dhaka right now? Is there a curfew in place?
yesterday, 6 p.m. evening, the government imposed curfew.
Okay.
And at night, last night, army requested people to obey the government order about the curfew imposement, and they request people to obey the order of curfew.
But clearly they are defying because the protesters, as you say, are out on the streets.
Yes, yes.
All right. Okay. Now give us a sense of what happens now that Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina has resigned. So we understand the army chief is going to address a press conference in a little while. But what are you picking up? What happens now? Does an interim administration come into place? Does the army take over directly? What happens now?
Actually, as far as there are no clarity about these things, and the things is that now the army is in control of the city, or we can say control of the Bangladesh right now. But I heard from one of the my close source that the student protester are not in mood to have a army ruled government in Bangladesh, army rules in Bangladesh. So I'm not confirming that the Sheikh Hasina has resigned and she has left for the another country or anything. But what I am saying is that these are the this kind of different updates are coming from the different multiple source of the media and some social media platform also.
Okay. And
Protestor earlier also they said that we don't want army rule in this country. So what will happen, that is the time will tell. But the now emergency situation is there. What is the political condition right now, that it is difficult to define which kind of political situation right now, emergency or Sheikh Hasina is in place or army rule, that is difficult to define. But the one thing is certain, that there is emergency like situation here in Bangladesh, and now there is no resistance on streets and road. So everyone are in jubilant mode. They are running on these roads and street and going towards the important buildings or important park or some field are there. Right. They are accommodating or they are gathering there. So these are the visuals from where which I can say these things.
All right. So give us a sense of what happens now. The people that you've been talking about, that where could things go? And what could we expect the army chief to talk about when he addresses that all-important press conference that everybody's looking forward to? Also, and if I can ask, there were speculations that there could be a certain sense of a coup. Is that so?
No. There is no speculation about the coup. One thing I want to make clear here, that earlier the timing for the army chief's press briefing or address to nation was 1 p.m. Then they changed time to 2 p.m. And again they postponed it to 3 p.m. Between this duration, during this time, there were media updates that army chief held a meeting with the all party political party representatives. So there is some consensus kind of things are going on. Again, this is media updates. You are asking, so that's why I am making my, I am telling it to you. But I am not confirming this all the things. There are no official confirmation about this thing. But there are multiple media sources who are claiming that army chief held a meeting with the political parties, all political parties of Bangladesh, and due to that, the media address to nation of the army chief delayed for 2 hours.
Okay, all right. I'm also told that I'm joined by my colleague Jessica Taneja, who's joining us from the newsroom. Jessica, what are you making of Naval Singh Parmar is with us from Dhaka, but what are you hearing? Where is the situation heading towards?
Well, see, hundreds of protesters have now entered Bangladesh Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina's residence, and situation seems to be quite chaotic at this point in Bangladesh. And as you have been reading reports like I have in the last few days, in fact, about a month, situation on ground and in many cities across Bangladesh has not remained normal. to the effect that there has been a curfew imposed in all the major cities and a national holiday called in for today, tomorrow and day after. And with Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina, situation are looking more and more grim at this point. Things on the ground do not look so much under control, with the paramilitary forces and people's anger now out on the streets and blocking highways. Apart from that, and also a lot of railway tracks. So of course, the situation not under control and curfew continues, but the protesters demand the resignation of Sheikh Hasina and will not stop till that is given to them.
All right. Naval Singh Parmar, there are some reports coming in, unconfirmed reports though, that Sheikh Hasina, along with her sister, has come into India. Are you hearing anything on those lines?
Yes, there are certain newspapers who are writing about that. She, not about her sister. They are not writing about her sister, but they claims that Sheikh Hasina left for the Kolkata.
Okay. All right. It could either be Kolkata or Agartala, because these are unconfirmed reports that are coming in. We are waiting for the official confirmation, waiting from the army chief to address the media, and we'll have some kind of clarity. Jessica, what is your sense that where now the protesters were demanding Sheikh Hasina's resignation? They've got that, but where do they go from here? Do the protests continue? Do they go back to their universities and institutes?
Well, it's difficult to ascertain because the widespread protests that you see not just in the capital Dhaka but other parts of the country as well, for example in Chittagong as well, you've seen not just student protesters. Now the anger has gone beyond the protest against quota system, which was initially brought in by a lower court and then of course again put a stay on by the Supreme Court last week, which had led to some sort of peace for some time, in fact few hours, and then you saw more than 200 people killed just last 2 weeks ago and 100 killed just yesterday in one day. So the situation on ground again does not sort of seem to signify the fact that situation in the future would remain calm and composed, given that the paramilitary is there, and we'll have to wait and see as to what the army chief says. Will the forces be withdrawn? How will normalcy prevail? All these questions remain unanswered given the large protest and the widespread protest and anger of people at this point. So the situation right now, as you and I both can see, is not under control and is unlikely to sort of quell till the time they have been given those assurances. Because remember, this started as a student protest and now it has gone and moved towards anti-government protests, where many groups unidentified are fighting it out with each other. So of course not very clear as to how this will proceed in the near future, but with Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina's resignation, things could calm down at least a little bit for now.
All right. Okay, I'm told I have with me Ranjan Chakrabarti. He's our former High Commissioner to Bangladesh. Thank you, Ambassador Chakrabarti, for joining me on the show. What do you make of the crisis that has erupted in Dhaka? And more importantly, where do you see this going from here?
Well, I think what India will be worried about is stability, instability, and what kind of a government comes to power in Dhaka. But that's something that we'll be watching very carefully. And I don't want to comment on what happened unless you want me to.
But no, I do want you to give us a sense of that, because you've served there, you know the institutions well there. So where does this go? Would they install an interim administration, an interim political, government, an all-party government? Could the army take over directly? What role could the judiciary play? Give us a sense of how things could develop.
Well, I don't think the army takeover is, I wouldn't put that as a very high priority, because though the army is playing a role in this behind the scenes, and clearly would have convinced Prime Minister Hasina that, that they are no longer perhaps, able to protect her and or whatever provides security. So leaving her with no option but to resign and go. It could be well be on their advice and the advice of other, I suppose, leaders, etc., who she would have consulted, I'm sure. So I believe that she has left the country, and I don't know where she's going, but possibly she could go across to India, because if it's on the screens, I've seen a helicopter which apparently she has boarded. So that can't go very far. So possibly she land in India.
Okay.
And so we have a problem now, because we'll be watching very carefully. We have good ties with Bangladesh, and so we'll be watching who takes over in Dhaka. And I'm sure the government of India will be reaching out to the new government to stabilize things and ensure that nothing further happens that will destabilize the country.
The situation there. All right. My colleague Naval Singh Parmar, who's with us from Dhaka, wants to come in. Naval Singh, you were saying something.
Actually, when on Saturday evening, there were thousands of people gathered at Shahid Minar, Central Shahid Minar in Dhaka, and at that place they announced for a 1-point demand instead of 9-point demand, and that 1 point was resignation of Bangladesh PM Sheikh Hasina and her party, her government. The subsequent demand, or a second part of that demand, was to have a national government. National government after the resignation of Sheikh Hasina.
Okay.
So that could be one option. And second thing, the things happened just 2 hours before. As unverified media sources are claiming that the army chief held a meeting with the all political parties of the Bangladesh. Means these two things are correlated with each other. National government and the meeting of army chief with the all the political parties of the Bangladesh. These are the some related things according to my view. But again, all these are the unverified, about the Madam Hasina's flight to, yeah.
All right. Let me bring in Ambassador Chakrabarti. Ambassador Chakrabarti, why is the army chief addressing a press conference? Why is the army chief holding a meeting with all political parties? Say if it were to happen in any other country, the president would have taken over. So give us a sense of what kind of a role does the institution of army play in Bangladesh, in the domestic politics of Bangladesh?
Well, the army in Bangladesh has a long history of intervening in politics.
Okay.
I mean, anybody who knows Bangladesh's history would know that. So, but over the years, they have generally not done so unless called upon to, in times of chaos, etc. I was there as High Commissioner when that happened in 2007, and there was a caretaker government organized by the army, and which lasted for about 2 years till the elections of 2008 and 2009. Prime Minister Hasina came to power, and she's been in as PM since then. So I think the army's role has always been important in Bangladesh for whatever reasons, and because it is seen as an institution which is disciplined, which is, and also I would say that. Somehow it is not difficult to draw some kind of a parallel between the role of the army and the role of the army in Pakistan. So I think there is somehow one gets the feeling that that there is some kind of a parallel, though not in that extreme kind of stage that it is in Pakistan. So today the army, which is somehow the people will say, okay, we trust the army, let the army, put things in order. So the army is going to say that, look, there is chaos, and I think
that is the reason for us
the army general is going to address the people, etc. So that's going to happen now.
Okay. But you're saying the army wouldn't, your sense is the army wouldn't want to come at the forefront and run things directly from the forefront, probably playing, doing some backroom maneuvering.
It seems to be the indication, because he's been consulting, the army chief has been consulting the political leaders of other parties, etc. And I don't know, he's supposed to address, or maybe he started addressing. And so
he started addressing. Yes.
They will do things from behind the scenes, like they did in 2007.
All right. My colleague Jessica is also joining us from the newsroom. Jessica, in your sense, how did things come to such a pass? What did Sheikh Hasina not do right for things to get that bad that she had to resign and apparently flee the country?
Well, the issue with the quota system is not new and something that was bound to create a tense environment the moment Sheikh Hasina's government pushed it, and again the court upheld it. That was the first day when this entire protest started, where this quota system, which of course favors the families and the extended family members of the people who fought in the Bangladesh's liberation in 1971. Given that history and how it has turned out to be now, it was only after the Supreme Court had set aside that order and prevented the implementation of this quota further just 2 weeks ago, where the protest had calmed down. But then again, the demand for Sheikh Hasina's resignation was in the offing for a very long time. Now, if you know, she was elected Prime Minister in January earlier this year, her 4th term. And 15 years already, there were factors of anti-incumbency as well. And not many Bangladeshis happy with her government and her political clutch over things. So, of course, things have not panned out well for her in the recent past, given the kind of political climate. And with the bringing in of this bill, the protests now seem to not be against the bill itself, but also against the government. So it has reached this point where talks were held but did not materialize or did not fructify, and it led to a point where Sheikh Hasina had to eventually resign. Amritpal.
All right, let me go back to Ambassador Chakrabarti. Ambassador Chakrabarti, let me ask you the same question. Such an experienced politician, Sheikh Hasina, did she not see this coming? What didn't she do right that things had come to such a pass?
Well, clearly, I mean, she has experience, but it has been building up in the sense that many Bangladeshis felt that anti-incumbency is what your reporter said, but also building up on other issues as well. That people felt that they had been denied the opportunity to choose an election, to choose their own government, not in 2009, but which was a fair election. But later, people felt that it was not fair, etc., and the opposition party boycotted the election, adding to those kind of rumors or whatever. So it was building up. Then, of course, came the economic and other issues that has been that has pulled down the Bangladesh's economy. The issue of jobs, unemployment, all these things, because as you can see, these are students.
Ambassador, can
and
I
that's
stop
why
you?
the quota
Ambassador
thing became so important.
Can I stop you for a moment? There is some breaking news. The army chief, who's addressing a press conference, has confirmed right now that Sheikh Hasina has tendered her resignation as the Prime Minister of the country, and efforts are underway to install an interim government. We'll have to see what the contours of that interim government are, but the army chief of Bangladesh, who's addressing a press conference right now in Dhaka, you see that on your screens right now. It's a televised press conference that the Bangladesh army chief is addressing. So he's confirmed that Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina has indeed officially tendered her resignation, and an interim government will soon take over. Ambassador Chakrabarti, what is your sense that what would be the contours of this interim government? Would it be an all-party government, given the fact that the army chief held a meeting with representatives of all political parties of Bangladesh?
Well, it could be an all-party government, or it could be a form of a caretaker government, although the provision for a caretaker government is no longer there in the constitution. It was expunged in 2011. So an all-party national government is a possibility. But who will head it? How many people? I think is going to degenerate. If they have that, is going to degenerate into squabbling very soon. And maybe that we will probably head for another election after some stability has been established.
Okay. Let me bring in my colleague Jessica Taneja, who's with us from the Delhi newsroom. Jessica, can you fill us something more on what you would have heard from the Army Chief's press conference?
Well, as I said, Amrit, we're waiting for more details from the press conference that has started. And since I have been, speaking with you here, I haven't been able to get the latest update. But yes, some key announcements. As soon as we refresh our screens, we'll probably be able to hear what the Army Chief has to say at this point. But of course, the news of Bangladesh Prime Minister has not boded well at this point, and protesters still on the streets. So the reports that I can read right now also suggesting that the official residence of Bangladesh Prime Minister has been taken over by the protesters, and a lot of things, of course, has been stolen also from the residents at this point, and absolute chaos and mayhem on the streets of Dhaka right now. In just some time, there'll be more details as to how. In fact, let me read out one of the few statements that I have been able to see. The Army Chief has said that Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina has resigned. An interim government will run the country. This is the latest update that we have right now from what the Army Chief has said. I'd like to read it out for our viewers once again. The Army Chief of Bangladesh has said, in the view of the current political and the social climate of the country, the Army Chief has said that has confirmed that Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina has now resigned and the interim government will now be run in the country. Now we'll have to wait and see on what this interim government would look like, but at this point these are the details available that have come now officially from the Army Chief. Whether there will be a de-escalation in the protests, whether the army and the paramilitary forces that have been deployed to disperse the protesters will actually successfully be able to bring in peace and stability, not just in Dhaka, but in many parts of the country as well, will be something that could be a priority on the mind of Bangladeshi authorities at this point. But what we can confirm is that the Prime Minister, Sheikh Hasina, who was elected in January earlier this year, her fourth term has now come to an end and she has now resigned. Okay. And of course, the interim government, as I pointed out earlier, will now take charge.
All right. Some more reports that I can see, Jessica. It says, in the view of the law and order situation in Bangladesh, the BSF, the Border Security Force, that's the Indian force guarding our borders, has issued a high alert along the India-Bangladesh border. The BSF DG, or Director General, has reached Kolkata and is holding a meeting with senior BSF officers. Ambassador Chakrabarti, how real is the threat of a spillover into our side of the border?
I think could be, because there are reports of attacks on the minorities, because what happens in Bangladesh whenever there is this kind of chaotic situation, the Islamists, who are basically the people who start attacking the minorities, and first of all is their hate factor towards the Hindus, and secondly they want to grab their properties and molest their women, etc., which happens every time that you see Bangladesh in this kind of a chaotic situation. So hence I wouldn't be surprised if not just the Hindus who will be fleeing from the violence inflicted on them, which has been constant in kind of Bangladesh's history. But we could also see other people scared or whatever because of the chaotic situation and no law and order, trying to take refuge across the border. And hence the BSF, logically has to be on a higher alert.
Okay. Jessica, give us a sense of, given the fact, as you were saying, that the protesters have breached the official residence of the Prime Minister. They are ransacking the residence. Similar scenes we had seen in Afghanistan when the Taliban took over. We saw in Sri Lanka when then President Rajapaksa was driven out. With this sort of a situation, the army will have to step in, though they are giving flowers to the army right now on the streets of Dhaka, but the army will have to step in and restore law and order there. How could that play out?
Well, that will be the priority right now of the forces deployed on the ground to not further instigate the protesters or not trouble them to the point where it escalates into outright violence, which has been the case just yesterday. I repeat, 100 people died on Sunday itself amid the protests that we've seen on the streets of Dhaka and elsewhere in the country, where official residences of the Awami League and also many other ministers of Sheikh Hasina's government were also attacked. So this has not really been a good time for Bangladesh overall to see the kind of stability and peace it demands from the weeks of protests we've been witnessing in our neighborhood. So, and also, Amr, there's more update from the army chief, who has said that we will return, and as I repeat, he said we will return peace to the country. He says we seek and ask our citizens to stop the violence, and also said that they will investigate all the killings that have happened over the past weeks. These are the words of Bangladesh's army chief, Wakar-ur-Zaman, and also saying further that there is no need of curfew or any emergency in our country. He says that they will find a solution to the crisis by tonight. So this is the latest that we can tell our viewers about what's coming in from Bangladesh, the presser that has taken place just a few moments back from Bangladesh's army chief, Wakar-ur-Zaman. These are his words, that the interim government will run the country. We will get to know as to what this interim government will be composed of. Lots of information awaiting from that part. And also he says we will return peace to the country at this point. That is what it desperately needs after it's seen more than 300 deaths in just 2 weeks.
That's right. In fact, to add to that, Jessica, General Zama has said the country is witnessing a revolution. The interim government will be formed. He's appealed to the citizens to cooperate. He says we won't achieve anything through violence. All excesses will be investigated. And he also confirmed, of course, that Sheikh Hasina has stepped down. And Ambassador Chakrabarti, what do we make of this statement? The country is witnessing a revolution. Why did the army chief have to say that?
Well, what he is, it's a bit of a hyperbole, but what he meant was that the students on the street have managed to manage the regime change, I mean, so to speak, in the sense that they have, if you remember, we saw similar kind of a thing but that was not just students, there were people basically in Sri Lanka, and this has happened. And so, unfortunately, the situation in Bangladesh was slowly going downhill as soon as this quota thing started and the High Court judgment came. And really, it has been, I would say, mishandled to a large extent. And that is why you have this situation, because of certain, wrong policies and wrong steps taken, which could have been avoided. But this is all in hindsight.
Okay, but couldn't Sheikh Hasina, I mean, my question again in a different way, that Sheikh Hasina, such an experienced politician, couldn't she see it coming? Couldn't she see that the ground beneath her feet was shifting?
I don't know, when you are, I suppose when you are 15 years in power, then sometimes you think that whatever you say or whatever you do it cannot be faulted. But I also blame, not blame, I would say that I've also put some responsibility on other ministers in the Sheikh Hasina government who may have taken decisions and which Sheikh Hasina did not know, and which led to the situation getting aggravated.
Okay, all right. Let me also bring in Jessica. Jessica, give us a sense of, would the protesters now be in a mood to heed to the appeal of the army chief and go back home?
Well, earlier when the Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina had called for talks, they were abandoned and of course not fruitful, and the violence kept on continuing on the streets. And today, as reports suggest from various news media organizations from Bangladesh itself, there are more than 10,000 protesters out in the streets across the country. So that, of course, in itself speaks volumes of the kind of, the crowds that are on the streets who are absolutely discontent with what this government has been doing in many, many years or so, and how it has turned happened to such an extent, of course, is not a question for any of us. But from the news that we have at this point, the address of the army chief, of course, does seem to have given some relief to the protesters, because the earlier talks that were not materializing, this would certainly giving into the demands of the protesters, which is what they earlier wanted, is the resignation of Bangladesh Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina, and that has been given to them. So of course we can see on how things will pan out in the next 3 days. But from the previous orders and the curfews in place, along with the paramilitary forces out in the streets to control the crowds, it is a holiday in Bangladesh for the next 3 days, and the kind of violence Bangladesh has seen in the last 3 days has been nothing compared to what the country witnessed in 1971. It has been that worse, and bad times indeed for Bangladesh.
Oh, okay. Ambassador Chakrabarti, the kind of political crisis that we see right now, you've served there. Is there a precedence to it? Since 1975, the assassination of Sheikh Mujibur Rahman, has the country seen a crisis of this magnitude?
Well, there has been a crisis off and on. I mean, you saw that, you mentioned Sheikh Mujibur Rahman and his family's assassination in 75. Then the military general takes over, Ziaur Rahman, who is also assassinated later. And then another military general takes over, who is deposed through this kind of public demonstrations. But that was led more by the political parties who wanted restoration of democracy. And now there have been off and on demonstrations. But the students have been an important sort of factor in protests. I mean, not just this time, but earlier.
Bangladesh was essentially a students' movement in the Dhaka University. It
not entirely, yes. Not entirely. Of course, they had a role in it. And it's not that one student group did everything. There were many other factors, many other people who joined in, etc. And anyway, that's history. I don't want to go into it. There are so many factors there. But today, I think one must recognize that the students again have managed to unseat a democratically elected government, if you want to put it that way. And hence, today we have a situation where we'll have a new government in Bangladesh, and Sheikh Hasina, who's been the most well-known leader of Bangladesh for the last so many years, has had to quit. Sorry, I'm not well.
All right, Ambassador, I'll request you to stay on. We are joined by Shamsher Chowdhury, former Foreign Secretary of Bangladesh. He's joining us from Dhaka. Many thanks, Ambassador Chowdhury, for speaking to us. Give us a sense, first of all, what is your sense that how could things develop in the coming hours, in the coming days?
Well, what we saw just now is like a rerun of the situation in Sri Lanka a couple of years ago, where the crowd entered the Prime Minister's official residence. She left in on a flight outside Bangladesh. There are rumors that she's gone somewhere in India, Agartala, somewhere else. Now, but the fact remains that she has resigned. That is, the army chief very categorically said she has resigned.
Right.
Now, army chief has also said that he has had a meeting with number of political leaders from other countries and civil society, including a leader from Jamaat. And they are now on their way to the president's house to have discussions with him, because we cannot have a constitutional vacuum. So it is not as such a military coup. They're still trying to put up a facade or a semblance of the constitution.
Okay.
At least maybe as an interim arrangement. Now the army chief repeatedly used the word interim arrangement.
Right.
Now, my friend Pinak talked of unseating an elected government. I think the public feeling in Bangladesh, the election itself was the beginning of the problem.
Okay.
The manner in this election and the last one was conducted, totally flawed, totally rigged, totally legally right, constitutionally right, but had no legitimacy. The reason that the Prime Minister had to flee the country is evidence that government lacked total legitimacy. It was not a military coup, it was a student public protest.
Okay.
So at the meeting with the army chief, there were two people from the Jatiyo party. Both of them are sitting members of parliament.
Mm-hmm.
So if they're going to form an interim government, keeping the constitution intact, then one of those sitting members of parliament will have to take over as prime minister. And the prime minister, so that though emergency has not been declared, the army chief made that very clear. The curfew does not exist anymore. The army chief made that also clear. He has also said that the army will not shoot, the police will not shoot, and he has appealed to the protesters to restore peace and order and go back.
Will they heed? The question is, Ambassador Chowdhury, will the protesters heed to the army chief's appeal? Are they in a mood to heed?
Well, you see, this is where I think the army chief has handled the situation well by enabling a leader of the protester group, Dr. Asif Nazrul, who's a professor at Dhaka University on international law, appealed to the protesters to go back and leave the streets so that order is restored in the country and in Dhaka city especially, so that they can, it will help them move on to the next step, which is to form the interim government. So the next couple of hours are critical and crucial. How we handle a situation in a post-Hasina scenario.
Okay. Ambassador Chowdhury, what does the constitution of Bangladesh say on such kind of a situation? Of course, it's a very special situation, but if the Prime Minister indeed is deposed, so who takes over? Does the President take over? What's the constitutional position on that? Ambassador, I can't hear you. I think, could you unmute yourself if you've muted yourself by any chance?
I am unmuted.
Oh, all right, I can hear you now.
Okay. See, our constitution, we are a parliamentary form of government like India.
Right.
So the reason that Jatiyo Party leaders were invited to the dialogue today with the army chief shows that the parliament will be restored, at least for the time being, and somebody from the parliament will be asked by the president to take over as prime minister, perhaps ad interim, and then call a fresh parliamentary election. So this, I see, the only constitutional way forward. The army chief has made clear that this is not an army takeover. So de facto, it is not, de jure, it is not an army takeover. But the fact that the political leaders were called to the army chief's office in the cantonment, and whatever decision.
Okay, I think the frame of Ambassador Shamsher Chowdhury, former Foreign Secretary of Bangladesh, has frozen because of some internet connection. We'll try and reconnect back with him. Let me get in Pinak Ranjan Chakrabarti. Ambassador Chakrabarti, we heard Shamsher Chowdhury say that it is not an emergency, it is not an army, it's not a coup by the army. But the very fact that the army chief is becoming the face of this transition surely speaks about a very, very important role that the army is playing in, one, the stepping down of Prime Minister Hasina, two, ensuring her safety if she indeed has left Bangladesh, as reports suggest and visuals suggest. She takes an army helicopter and arrives either in Agartala or in Kolkata. And in the coming days, the army could play a very important role, not just in government formation, but running of that government and also controlling the law and order situation there, but because clearly it is out of the hands of the police.
Yes, indeed. I think army will play a very major role. As I had said earlier, and I don't want to repeat all what I said, that if you look at the history of the army's intervention in Bangladesh, they have done it many times. So I think this is again, in some ways, a repeat of 2007 when the army intervened. Of course, no student protest was there. It was mainly political street fighting that forced the army to intervene and set up a caretaker government. Now, here we are not talking about a caretaker. We are probably talking about a national government, because among the elected leaders who are there in parliament, there could be, some agreement to form a government. And of course, the army will use its influence in the background, perhaps even do some arm twisting in trying to get some people to join the government, so that there is some kind of stability and some normalcy is restored. And the students who are out on the street, or whoever the protesters, they're not merely students, by the way. They have been infiltrated by political activists, and I think they will be told to go back. I think he's already mentioned that whatever you demanded has happened, and now please go back. And the scenes that you see of people entering the Gana Bhavan, or the Prime Minister's residence, is of course something which happened in Sri Lanka also. And the army could have stopped it, but they didn't, probably thinking that this will let off some more steam, and quieten things down.
Okay, Ambassador, before I let go of you, because you've served in Dhaka as the High Commissioner of India, what would be the Indian High Commissioner doing right now? He would be working the phones both with the political establishment, parts of that, with the army, with the South Bloc. What would be weighing on his mind? What would be his concern? Would the situation of the minorities be a concern for him?
Well, certainly that would be. It always has been. He would have been working the phones much before what happened today. And he would be in touch with various people. And that's his job. I mean, he has to ensure that he's up to date. But as of now, I think he will be more concerned about the safety of the High Commission, its staff, and the Indian citizens who are there, who have been advised to contact the High Commission. Special numbers have been given so that they can help them in case of need. And basically telling Indian citizens to be safe, because it could, in this kind of an atmosphere, though I don't see that happening, because I think from now, I think things, I believe, will sort of climb down a bit, and but then the heat of the moment, some
you never
things
know,
can
things
happen.
can go south. Yeah. Right. Okay, Ambassador Pinack Ranjan Chowdhury.
Thank you.
Pinack Ranjan Chowdhury, thank you very much for joining us. And let me go back to my colleague Jessica Taneja, who joins us from the newsroom, and also I can see Ramesh Ramachandran on the screen, both joining us from the newsroom. First to you, Ramesh, was this expected? The legitimacy of Sheikh Hasina's government was dwindling, as the former Foreign Secretary of Bangladesh was saying, that this election's legitimacy was in question right from the time the elections were held. And now, because of not handling the situation fine, things came to such a pass.
Well, was it expected? The short answer, Amrit, is no. Could it have been avoided or averted? Absolutely yes. Remember, just to put this in context for our viewers, Amrit, this all began a month or a month and a half ago because of protests against quotas or reservation in government jobs for children and grandchildren of the freedom fighters of Bangladesh who took part in the 71 Liberation War. So what began as an anti-quota protest has overnight transformed or morphed into anti-government protests, targeting in particular the government of Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina. When, how and why it took place, it's still not certain. But the groundswell of opinion is clearly against the government, and we've seen what happened in the last 60-odd minutes when the Prime Minister has vacated her official residence and left the country to a destination that is still not certain. But just to put some more context here, Amrit, and you've covered the Sri Lanka protests a couple of years ago. Something similar has happened in Dhaka as we speak. Protesters storming the official residence of the Prime Minister and telling in no uncertain terms that thus far and no further things have to change. But the heartening thing, the big takeaway from this, Amrit, is that the army chief has stepped in to clear the situation, clear the air with the protesters, extending an olive branch to them, saying that trust the army to do the right thing. The army chief saying two things. One, that an interim government will run the affairs of Bangladesh, number one. And number two, the army chief will consult the president and come to a solution within the next 5 to 7 hours.
Okay. Ramesh, I want your opinion on this. You say this wasn't expected. Okay. But, you know, now the army has to send the protesters back. If they wanted really to stand by Sheikh Hasina, they could have. Why did they not?
Well, it's a profound question to ask, but there are no easy answers to that just yet, Amrit. But the fact of the matter is that the army chief has stepped in to restore a semblance of normalcy, given the flux that is taking place in Bangladesh as we speak, to ensure there is some decorum and some peace restored in the country. And he has asked protesters to stop violence, trust the army to do the right thing, and restore peace and normalcy as quickly as possible. And like I told you, the heartening thing is that he has said we are in touch with all political parties, all shades of political opinion, to come to a consensus and do the right thing, and the circumstances warrant that. So clearly, we're looking forward to, one, the army chief calling on the president of the country as we speak, and two, to form an agreement on the interim government within the next 7 to 8 hours, possibly by the end of day tonight.
Okay. So one thing is clear, it is not an emergency or a declared emergency. Of course, it's a political crisis, a very deep political crisis.
No emergency.
Yes, no emergency, Ramesh. So it is not a national emergency, not a declared emergency. Of course, it's a very deep political crisis. They will have to do a lot of, political wrangling to form the government, and very quickly at that, as the army chief said, that in a matter of hours there will be an interim government. We'll have to wait to see what the contours of that government are. Would it be a national government? Would it have, it will be an all-party government? All that will emerge in the next few hours. But it is not an emergency. And then he said that we will do the right thing. But he's also told the protesters, do not indulge in violence. Go back to your homes. You have achieved what you had to. The Prime Minister has resigned. Yes, Ramesh, you wanted to come in.
And just very quickly, Amrit, if you allow me to,
yes, please.
Just to put this in context again for our viewers. Now, all these dramatic visuals take place barely a week or 10 days away from the anniversary of the assassination and overthrow of Sheikh Mujibur Rahman on 15th August 1975.
Yes. That's right. That has a significance of its own, given the political crisis. Though it was a political crisis of a very different nature, there was a direct role of the army, of elements in Bangladesh. But this is clearly something which was a political anger against Sheikh Hasina, what started as a students' protest against the quotas, but then it transformed into a wider movement with clear signals of politicking by other political parties, the opposition parties as well, and the possible role of the army. Perhaps the army, we're just speculating here or sharing an opinion. I'm sharing just an opinion that the army perhaps saw that now it's no longer tenable to support Sheikh Hasina, because if they are seen as doing so, things could go south. All right. And that is it for the moment. Thanks for watching. We'll bring you updates on how things develop in Dhaka. Thanks for watching for the moment.